Yeah, sound design was wicked. I liked the first part of the big battle where you were kind of seeing all the traps and whatnot, and because it was something you hadn't really seen them do, was in kind of them. Well, you've seen them preparing the town and stuff, but specifically you hadn't seen certain things. So that was quite kind of cool to see how that played out. But then when it actually got to the actual combat, as I said, I was pretty desensitized to it by the end. I wasn't like on the edge of my seat, just like, oh wow, something like you are sometimes watching, say, like John Wick or something like that. I'm saying that gets bloody desensitized by the last one as well. But I think it's just a problem with action films when the action goes on for too long like that. It's really hard to keep it like exciting and fresh. Like that's kind of just something that happens, and it happened to me in this film. It happened to me by the end of that fight, because it was a big old battle.
I think they're nice that they, as much as it was constant fighting, they did sort of play on the emotional side a little bit sometimes. Like I think the best shot for me, although it was quite morbid, was when that apprentice protege guy was killed, and he was sort of dying, looking through like a bit of wood, and you could see the scene from his perspective. So it was like, you know, on its side, watching his master get cut down as well, and then there's the two of them dying together. So like, it wasn't just, which you don't see as much in sort of John Wick. It's just one person just steamrolling through everyone. And actually, they played on the idea of you know, people, because these are all samurai that want to die. You know, they want to die glorious deaths, and so they're just running in like that as they do, to the point where they're just sort of death by 1,000 cuts. It made it interesting, but it looked bloody terrifying.
Yeah, because I don't think it was glorious at all. Like, you know, if they were wanting to go in like and come out with a very glorious death, like, I think that perhaps the film was saying like, nah, man, they just get dashed and sliced, and some of them don't even get stabbed to be killed. Some of them just fall to death, like fall dead with fatigue. Like sometimes they're standing there and they're just about to take another hit, and then it just slumps to the ground. I thought that was really interesting. I thought that was kind of impactful, and especially as you say, Jem, some of the shots where they slow down and they show like, you know, the violence from the you know, a dying person's perspective, and even the camera, you know, turns on its like it tilts on its side and watches the action playing out. I thought it was really interesting. The way the director played the violence was interesting.
Can I ask a question? So one thing I thought they did really well was to make you really, really despise the main kind of antagonist, the Emperor's kind of uncle or whatever, his nephew or something like that. Anyway, the guy that's supporting him, the main samurai's old sparring partner, did you buy his motive for supporting that guy, even when he knew how horrific he was?
No, I think it needed a bit more. It needed to embellish that backstory slightly to get as much emphasis from it as they were suggesting. I think.
Or just flesh it out with another scene between him and the Emperor guy, just to flesh that out and make them appear to have a closer connection, and so that he is so loyal to him. Because it's the foundations of him being a samurai. Well, he's pledged his oath, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's why. And I suppose even down to the last bit when he was talking with him about, you know, when we used to spar, blah blah. I guess even then, it just, there's the whole like, oh, he might decide to switch, I guess, but
yeah,
I don't know.
I think that maybe the film relies a bit too much, or that, for example, he relies too much on or assumes that the audience knows more about like the cultural kind of context for this. So I think that a lot of it's like the loyalties in, what was it called, that era of Japan, or that
feudal.
Was it feudal? What was it called? It begins with an SH or something like that. And anyway, there is quite a lot to be said. I don't know about any of it. About how these people were kind of born into specific roles, and they had to be loyal in those roles until death, and all this sort of stuff, which was actually reality. Like that played out in feudal Japan for a while, and I think that maybe just the director or the writer assumes that the audience understands that or is like to grips with it, perhaps more than
I think that's fine as well as his character goes, in the sense of it does show a little bit of how conflicted he as a character is without even trying, I suppose. He is, like Liam says, these people that are born into roles and they stick to it and they're so loyal and they have honour, and his role is to protect the Emperor. And yet the whole time he was wrong himself, because the Emperor kicks his head afterwards, doesn't he, as well? And the whole time he's just fooled himself into believing that this is what he needs to do. He needs to protect this Emperor, blah, blah, but in reality the Emperor doesn't care about him at all. So I feel like his character was fine. Like you say, Jem, maybe another scene to flesh it out or something, just a relationship between the two of them other than them running and him protecting him on, on their journey that they're doing is fine. But I can't say it wasn't something that maybe we saw coming, but the kicking of his head I thought was quite good. But we already knew that the Emperor was bad enough as it is, I suppose.
Part of the idea was that, like, they don't care about each other. It's not a question of like empathy or like a bond or these types of things. It's just his role. It's just the role that he'd stepped into, and it's the role that he has to live up to. It's like an integrity thing, I think, more than anything else. I think that even if he knew that, this master guy was going to kick his head after it had been decapitated, he probably would have continued serving him, just because that was the duty he was, assigned to fulfill.
Has anyone got any other burning things that they disliked or really liked about the film before we rate it? No. Okay.
Let's rate it.
Oh, let's rate it then. 13 Assassins, Takashi Miike, 2010 remake. Liam, you chose it, so you go first. What are you going to rate it?
I'd probably give it its IMDb rating. What is that, like 7.6 or something?
Is it?
Yeah, I'd give it a 7.6.
7.6. Okay, James?
A 6.6.
6.6. Jem?
7.2.
7.2. I'm going to give it 6.9. So, quite a spread there, actually. Why would you give it its IMDb rating, Liam? Why would you give it like roughly that? Not specifically because it's IMDb.
I think the second half of the film, just the way the violence was handled, it was so different and so fresh, and it made me feel kind of strange watching it, like nauseous and kind of like dizzy, and I haven't felt that way watching violence in a film for a while. So yeah, pretty much for that reason alone, just the way that was handled. Pops it up from like I don't know, similar rating to you, like 7, but. Yeah.
James, you've given it 6.6, which is the lowest of them all. Why do you feel 6.6?
I guess probably because none of that really landed with me. Like from what Liam's describing, I'm sure if I felt that way, I would have probably given it the same rating. But for me, by the end, the violence, as I said, I was fairly desensitized to it. There was also, as the stuff discussed earlier, like there was quite a few odd moments where I was like, There's just seems to be some. I feel like I'm laughing in bits where maybe I shouldn't be laughing, and there just were bits that seemed a little bit odd for me. And again, the other bit to it is just kind of like I didn't really feel much when a lot of the characters died, because I didn't really know them, didn't really get a chance to know them. Which if that's the case, then. I mean, I think that's obviously a shortcoming in a film for me.
That's a 7 overall, by the way. And I'll stop recording there. And